Nobody want to see that shit.
Come on, somebody wants.
You know what I do want to see? A
Yeah.
fucking tier list link.
Oh, okay.
It's on Brennan's stream. You gotta check it out.
Why are you like this?
It's in his stream, but not only is it in his stream, you gotta do ! Discord, join the Discord, sign up, give your social security number, your credit card information, and then fill out a survey, and then you can have access to the link.
In the Discord. You know what's funny? He says you can watch the stream, but he's not even fucking streaming.
That's not even true. I am.
Yeah, where you at?
Oh, I just got another ad, dude. This is bogus.
Yeah.
Alright.
Dude,
I'll
you
link
just hit
it.
the link.
I'll link it.
You stupid fuck.
Yo, we're putting this on YouTube. Chill out. Jesus.
You cut it out. We haven't even started yet. You're not putting anything on YouTube.
Oh. It is started. Unlucky.
Yeah, hope
We
you got
haven't
editing
started
skills.
talking about anything, so I'm confused.
Well, I mean, are you uploading the other one on YouTube too?
No.
Talking to himself.
I can't believe that happened. Okay. Alright. Here's the link.
For fun at this point.
Yeah, I mean,
What?
it's about
You could just put garbage at the bottom, I'm gonna be honest.
Mine says competitive, viable, somewhat viable, not viable, D.
Wait, did he give it to us?
I did.
What is D supposed to be?
For fun at this point.
These nuts.
Okay, for fun
Are you just copying another YouTuber? Is that what's going on?
at this point.
Alright.
Nothing wrong with that. Tell you what.
I want to start with Reinhardt.
That's the introduction. I'm gonna. That's it.
Good.
Yeah.
You better put him in the right spot.
No, introduce yourselves right now, okay?
Okay, hold on. Aren't you running this show?
You're
dude?
literally the host, and you're not gonna say anything. You're just gonna.
Start with Reinhardt.
You're not gonna have no introduction. You're not gonna
I
play
had,
your thing
I
that
had
you
the
made.
introduction playing,
you
and I
just,
got called
like-
a fucking retard for the 3
You-
seconds.
Well, why'd you start?
You better pull it
why
back
did you
up.
start recording?
It's okay. Anyways, I'm
Dude,
Brandon.
is that a WoW ad? Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm Brandon. We're based out of Arizona, outside of Phoenix, Tempe. You guys have definitely seen us at events. We got Jonah, the big orc smasher, Matthew, the meta slayer, aka a Pro Quest winner. We also have Jacob Torres, the big dash simp. You'll see him rocking them pistols in Florida. And you have me trying to play anything that will win games because I'm a meta slave. We're making a tier list, and then we're going to talk about some fucking...
We gotta
uprising
restart.
cards.
We gotta restart. You can't be cussing in the video.
I'm,
Are you serious?
we're cussing, okay?
Also, who's going to Florida?
Did I say Florida? New Jersey. New Jersey.
Now we gotta restart again.
Great start.
He's gotta write a script, bro. He's gotta write a script at this rate. Oh my
Great
God.
start. Anyways. Jonah, tell us why your main man is a competitive character.
All right, so the brute boy Reinhardt, right? His class, hero ability is Intimidate. So anytime you discard an attack action with 6 or more power, you get to intimidate a target card, typically your opponent's. And that card can't block for the rest of the turn. You also can't play it, even up until you get to end step when like weird people can do like instant stuff before the end of your turn or whatever. That card is just it's banished face down until my turn's over. So extremely viable in this very racy meta where people don't want to block and they just want to hit. Because on the other side of the spectrum, I can block if I want to, or if my hand's not that great. Whereas you want to dump your garbage hand, because maybe you didn't get your gas. Sometimes I intimidate it and you can't. So you're either forced to take the damage or give me the cards that aren't intimidated. A lot of hand disruption, and all of his attacks are usually pretty big for the most part. And he has a lot of give me 2 cards or else, which is always nice. Currently, you can build a deck that makes your opponent do things that they don't want to do. Sometimes the intimidates don't hit, and that's okay. He still pushes damage really good, and when you're within 20 life, is able to take it from you. So I would definitely consider him competitive in the meta, with Prism being one of the top players and being able to roll for action points. I know that's not a go-to strat, but the fact that you can do it is pretty good. And then he has cards with natural go again, so you could always apply pressure, maybe give an intimidate if they don't respond with like an aura or something like that in the Prism matchup, and then with go again destroy an aura. So not only did you push damage, intimidate a card, but you also took out an aura. So
Oh, are we talking about this meta right now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Agree.
Okay, so get into Starvo.
We're gonna save him. We're saving him last.
No. Is Reinhardt good into Starvo?
Yeah,
That's my
Reinhardt's
question.
Reinhardt's fine into Starvo, and I can explain why if you'd like.
I would actually agree. I feel like it's not a terrible matchup for Reinhardt.
No, that's what I'm getting at.
The matchup against Starvo is unique in the sense that the intimidate factor, right? So not everybody always thinks about, aside from our Giga Chat over here, Matt Vore, ProQuest winner. Not everybody always thinks about what the intimidate means, and I've noticed in most of my games against people who haven't played a Reinhardt or don't have a lot of experience, they let the intimidate go through before they play any instance. Crown of Seeds being one of like the greatest cards, right? So you Crown of Seeds, throw your arsenal under, draw a card, and then you decide if that new hand is now worth blocking or if you're just going to let them intimidate. Most people just let me intimidate, and then they realize, oh, I could have Crown of Seeds, but I didn't, and now my cards are intimidated, which kind of throws off their whole let me get the reveal hand and then do all my stuff. You know, it forces the game into like give it to him naturally. If he doesn't get it naturally, my intimidates cause enough disruption and confusion in the game to where I've noticed that my win rate against Starvo, I mean, I haven't played him a whole lot, but I would just throw it up as a 50-50 because I've won to as many Starvos that have beat me. So
I do want to throw this. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I feel like your matchup into Starvo, you're definitely wanting to throw in pummels, right?
I have pummels in, yeah, but pummels are never my game plan. I would rather get my gas first. I throw in my defense reactions to anticipate the turns where he gets a crippling crush or whatever crippling crush revealed Bravo 11-13 whatever fucking dominate, do some dumb shit, go again. Like you have to have that to be ready to play his game. But yeah.
No, I would agree. Any naysayers that this man is non-competitive?
I would put him in.
I
wouldn't
think
put him in
viable.
competitive.
And the reason
Yeah,
why I think he's
put him in
viable is
Put him in
because
Do it.
the Starvo matchup's okay. Where I feel like he kind of suffers. Like the Starvo's, like Jonah said, it's winnable. You just need some things to line up. Like I feel like Reiner's one of the few heroes who's very good at the turns when Starvo doesn't fuse and Reiner has a good turn. He's very good, right? So you intimidated a couple cards, and usually when the Starvo doesn't have a fuse, usually they want to block as much as possible. Arsenal cards swing the hammer at you, and so they can set up next turn for a Crown of Seeds play and just have C5 cards again to see if they can fuse or not. And Reiner's one of the heroes, like Jonah was saying, if you intimidate some of the key cards out of their hand, like say they wanted to block with or not. And also with the Autumn's Touch ban, he's just inherently bad, much worse at blocking. The one benefit is he can use two blocks and still turn off things like barraging beatdown. So even though it only blocks for 4, he's kind of blocking more because he's turning off barraging. But if Reiner gets like a double triple intimidate turn, all of a sudden he can only block with 1-2 block, and then say he doesn't want to give up his Oakenold or his pulse. He has one of the pulses that doesn't block, like either Eisenloft or
Candlehold.
Candlehold blocks. It's the red one. I forget. Volthaven.
Oh, Volthaven.
But I also feel like the only game plan that he really has into the Rune Blades is like the race. I don't like the only heroes that I think can fatigue the Rune Blades at this point or block them out is just the Guardians. And by the Guardians, I probably mean Oldhim at this point because Control Starvo seems like he's going away for good. So that's why I would just put him in viable, right? He's got a solid game plan, but at the same time, like he kind of gets bullied by someone like Chain, I feel like, which I think is going to be very prevalent moving forward.
I do. Yeah, you're not. Jake, your mic is muted. Let's move to something a little more interesting. What do you guys think about Dash right now?
Dog shit.
Dash Simp
Just
Jacob.
for fun.
Just for fun?
Just for fun.
I don't know. I think Dash is actually really good.
I think somewhat viable.
I would like to rewind to give everyone something to go off of while we're talking about each hero. Would everybody care to chime in on the top 3 decks they think are quote the meta and will be at any of the Calling ProQuest big tournaments? I think that would help everybody when we're deciding like which heroes and why we're saying what we're saying.
Bravo, Chain, Prism.
I think honestly, I don't think there's 3. I think there's more 4. So I'm thinking Bravo show or not Showstopper, sorry, Bravo Star of the Show, Chain, Prism, and I've seen some pretty nasty Briar decks that like if they get an early channel mount heroic, they're out racing Chain. A hand doesn't line up for Starvo, all of a sudden they have to take 20 some damage to have a turn, or they try and block as much as they can, and then kind of just get blown out. Like for example, some of the big Briar turns, like if you can do some good damage throughout the game and then set up, for example, like 1 or 2 amulets of Earth on the board, and then all of a sudden you have heroic out and you play a card like Force of Nature Fuse, then every card in the chain's threatening. 1 is threatening to draw because it's already higher than heroic. And then 2 is they would for you to deny the draw, you can use the Earth amulets as an essential or an attack reaction to give everything +1. So it's almost like having an Art of War on the board at all times. And I did a little bit of testing with that, and it seemed really solid.
I haven't got to see that deck played yet. I actually hope I don't see that deck in New Jersey because that sounds frustrating.
Yeah, Briar's really good. She just needs to. The most prevalent build that I've seen is the heroic build, and I like to say you're playing fair Briar until you play heroic, and then all of a sudden you have these insane, outrageous turns that no hero can block.
I will say I think she probably suffered the worst with the bans though,
What do you mean with Autumn's Touch?
and losing Skeleton.
Yeah, losing that.
Yeah, losing Skeleton was bad against the Starvo matchup.
Yeah, and just any other aggro race because that was essentially your block for the majority of the game, right?
Yeah.
Because
I-
they don't like to block.
Yeah, I think she did get hit by the bans, but the Autumn's Touch is kind of irrelevant. And yeah, I think you're right, Jake. It's more of like they lose the block from Skeleton.
Yeah, because like if you like in the matchup, like if you're playing like I don't know, like against Chain, obviously the Briar's racing, right? And he has a Husk, and now what do you have? Tunic and Arc Knight.
Yeah, I think it's possible to race Chain on Briar. Like I said, you just need some like good disruption. So like you can have Runic Reclamations in, and you can also have things like CNC. And then Briar's really good at making these cards that have on hits like Runic Reclamation and CNC hit, because one, she has the Channel Mount Heroic, but also like for example she plays Bramble Spark Fuse, another non-attack, and then CNC. 1 Arcane, 9 go again. All of a sudden Chain has to give up. He can't just give up the Carrying Husk to keep his arsenal, right?
Yeah.
And then I also think another reason why she's really good is the same thing with Reinhardt, is when Starvo doesn't have a fuse turn, she's just insane against that, right? So she gets even if he does have a fuse turn, as long as it's not like discard, usually she can deal with the 1 frostbite. So like for example, if he fuses, plays break ground for 7/9 go again, she's like, okay, I'll just take it. And then the hammer, depending on how her hand looks, she might block 1 non-attack if she has an embodiment, or 1 non-attack, or 1 attack, or 1 card from hand, 1 armor if she really doesn't want the frostbite. But most of the Earthbriar lists have enough blues to deal with the frostbite. So any turn that Starvo's not threatening discard or some major on hit, she kind of doesn't care almost.
Did you do any testing into Prism at all with that Briar or no?
Briar is inherently, I think all the Rune Blades are inherently good against Prism, especially the greed list that she was running before with the 27 auras. A lot of, if been listening to any of the other podcasts around or talk shows, they're talking about how they don't think the list will survive the 27 or 24 aura. I can't remember the exact number, but a lot of the things, like all the auras block 2, the instance block 0. So like if you had the key turns where you have to block Briar, you can't be running that list. So I would imagine that Prism's probably going to shift more towards like either the Herald plan against Briar, or maybe we'll see something like Tyler Horsepool's old list with more defense reactions and trying to block more.
Like a fatigue Prism.
not even fatigue necessarily, but just like more tanky.
Yeah,
Tank
tanky.
Prism.
Well, tank Prism, and you think you're probably gonna see Glisten maybe come back too.
Maybe. I think what's it called? Prism has a lot of gas now in the form of aggro because
Yeah.
she can run 3 red War Tunes, so that's 1 for 7. She can run 3 red Mirage Metamorphs, that's 3
Yup.
or 1 for 7. She can run cards like Phantasmaclasm if she wants to, and then like obviously like the good heralds like Protection, Erudition's obviously really great, but most of the time it's not hitting.
And if they want to be really greedy, Fractal.
Yeah, Fractal's also good, or can be good. I think it's more of like a one of two of card in her deck.
Hmm.
I just think Chain's interesting because obviously I attempted to play him too big brain for me, but I am actually probably more scared of good chains than I am Bravos because Bravos are just if they're brain dead. It's a brain dead deck, so like I run into that and I just pray to God that we win this game.
Yeah, I mean, for example, like we can move over to Starvo. Obviously, I think of the 4 pillars of the format is which I would call the top 4 that we have in competitive right now. Bravo is most likely to be the most represented, I would think,
Mhm.
at Callings and the Pro Tour currently.
Yep.
I think it might be close between him and Chain. But especially Kel McCreath, he's a renowned Guardian player who essentially invented the control deck that Michael Hamilton, made a couple tweaks to and piloted to the Calling victory. He was saying how he doesn't think the control list is very viable anymore because without the Awakening, it kind of doesn't have a win con against the full casino build of Starvo. So he was saying that most of Starvos probably are going to go to the full casino, as in like 50 elements, and then only running things like Spinal Crush, Oaken Old, and maybe some of the weirder cards like Mulch
Yeah.
for some of the slower matchups. And the way it works is like if like I played him earlier, like a deck like that, and if you fuse every single turn or fuse most turns, or even if you just fuse like one Oaken Old throughout the whole game, it's enough tempo to win you the game almost. But
Uh,
the decks that are good against them either one make them discard,
mhm.
or two have a game plan to stop all the discards and stuff like that, like Chain. Like if the way that reason why Starvo was so good against Chain before is because one Chain had a sideboard correctly against Starvo, but now that he knows they're all playing Casino, he can just probably run the full fatigue package and know that he can't outrace them unless he gets like 3 Oaken Olds back to back.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. Like I said, I think everybody agrees. Every podcast I listen to, you guys probably agree. It's like you sit down against Bravo and you're just like, well, we're either getting super lucky or we're just getting high rolled.
Are we hitting 7s?
Yeah.
I think most decks I think Starvo is very targetable for most heroes now, essentially because he has less than 3 blocks. They don't have to worry about awakening, so they can get far ahead however much they want. Um, it just comes down to how much he fuses. Like if he fuses the good important on hit effects, you're gonna lose. Like no hero can really deal with 3 fused Oaken Olds and 2 a hammer swing. It's just way too much tempo.
Very true.
But there's a lot of heroes that are good at dealing with like I was talking about
Three
earlier,
card
like Evergreen.
hands.
Well, no, like the Evergreen for like 7 go again, dominate. It's like, okay, you can just take 7, right? Because
Yeah.
if you're playing an aggro deck, you're gonna do more than 7 damage on your turn anyways. And then the hammer swing, as long as you can deal with the frostbite, you only took 11 damage.
Mm-hmm.
And most aggro decks are putting out like probably 15 plus with a 5 card hand.
Yeah.
So you just need to be able to like get around the really big on hits like once or twice. That's why Chain is so good with the Carrion Husk.
Yeah. Well, that's all I was saying with high rolls. Like they get an Oaken, all of a sudden crippling, and then even Spinal Crush into certain heroes is it's so much to deal with, and then 4 in a frostbite after you already lose so much. But anyways, yeah, he's gonna get banned, and we're fuck him.
Yeah, I think I saw a post earlier today that he won I think there was a battle hardened in today actually in I think it was Pittsburgh, something like that. So I
Yep.
think he goes up to 980 living legend points. So I think he needs to win like literally like
One
a,
more.
a handful of
The ba-
pro quests
the
to get
battle
living
hardens
legend.
aren't just blitz.
Yeah, no, there's a mix.
Oh, okay.
They changed some of them to CC to help boost Starvo's ascend to Living Legend.
That would be
Uh,
so awesome. If like, can you imagine? Like right before we go, he gets fucking banned. Oh my god.
He can't. It's impossible. I think that was the last living. I think that was the last thing you could get points for before tomorrow, or I guess it is tomorrow,
Yeah.
May 2nd in New Zealand.
He was on track too, but there was some battle hardens that he did not win.
He needed, yeah, I remember reading the post. I think he needed to win 3 out of the 4 battle hardens and the calling, which he won the calling in, I think 2 out of the 3 battle hardens.
Yeah.
So he's just short.
Okay, competitive chain, Starvo, Prism, Briar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should probably talk about Prism. I think the other 3 got, their handle, their spiel on why they're good. Jonah, why don't you start? You're the pounder smasher of Prism on Reinhardt.
This is true.
What makes Prism good?
Prism has a lot of utility. Prism gets to swing a bunch of auras at you. She has many outlets. All right. So depending on what your core is, how you like to play the deck, Prism gets to create a bunch of auras and essentially have a million Kadachis to drown you throughout the game. Create a spectral shield, hit you with a bunch of them after she's blocked your turn out. Or depending on the matchup. It all depends on the matchup. And then she gets all these auras out on the board where people who it's heroes that aren't easily able to gain action points struggle with. So on my list that you can't see on the screen, I had Dory as one of the heroes in the somewhat viable list because if she can dodge Prism, Dory's still a very good hero. Dory's just very bad into Prism because it's hard to get action points, and one of Dory's gimmicks is swinging with her weapon twice to create counters. And in a race meta, that's very good when people don't want to block. But against Prism, where she just spawns a bunch of auras and then repetitively pokes you throughout the game, and then has like other utility in her deck, like Art like Sentinel, that your big tall attack that you saved up for. Prism saved an Arc Light in her arsenal and plays it, and so your big tall attack that would have gained you some momentum or maybe put her into lethal range stops your entire thing. She's very good and very versatile into most heroes. I don't play her, so I have no idea what those decks would look like. I just know that Reinhardt usually chews her up and spits her out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think any of the brutes for Prism is kind of definitely a scary matchup because they're very good at dealing with not only the Herald side of the deck but also the Aura build. And it got along to go with what you've been saying, Jonah, about how she's flexible. That's totally like she can build her deck in a way that in the matchups where, for example, it's like a 70-30 or better when she plays the auras, like against decks like Dorinthia who can't deal with the auras that well. She's just so she can kind of pivot in between game plans. Like if it's really good, for example, to play the auras into Dorinthia, she can have that sideboard set up for the certain heroes that are really bad against the auras. And then heroes who don't have a lot of Herald poppers or things like that, she can just go to like the full aggro side of the deck and try and steamroll them over essentially.
She also has a lot of one cost, like big, like you were saying, the heralds for 7,
Go
the
again.
metamorphic for 7. Yeah, go again because of illusionist attacks. Her weapon, she can create shields that block damage and they attack. Like she has a lot going for her that it's hard with some heroes that are very good that could shake the meta to put up with.
Yep, I would agree 100%. That being said, Chain's probably really good into her too because he can create those action points by using those creepers.
Kind of, but the way that Chain usually plays into Prism, from what I've seen, is
race.
they just don't care about the auras, right?
Mhm.
If you're not blocking them, you have to not block them to play an aura, and the only aura they really care about is they have to respect Arclight Sentinel. I've seen Chains respected in the form of time snap potions in their list. There's ways to get around it with playing just time skippers in the list, because the one thing that you said, Creepers technically does get around it, but if they slam ALS down, there is no way to activate Creepers, because even if you attack it with a card, it Spectre triggers and cancels the attack.
Yep.
But the only aura that he really that he cares about is the I think it's called Parable of Humility, the one that gives -1 to all of his attacks. If Chain's attacking, 4 or 5 attack action cards in one turn, all of a sudden that aura's blocking 4 or 3. Like, depending on the turn, his huge turns are 3, 4, 5 attacks. So that's like the only one he really cares about.
Yeah.
Sounds like a match I saw Jacob playing Valda against a Benji, and ate the entire turn after playing a "This round's on me."
Oh yeah.
Dude, what a fucking game! Oh,
Said,
excuse me.
yeah, I'll take one. Yeah, I'll take one.
You guys want to move away from the top four, and I honestly, I don't really want to talk about Bravo Showstopper. I don't think he's going to be represented. As
Whoa,
Matthew
whoa,
said.
whoa! I want to talk about Showstopper. Put him in the somewhat viable, baby.
You think
No.
He's a
so?
guardian. Yeah, I
I-
think it's somewhat viable.
I don't
Yeah.
know though, but like it's like, dude, why would you play him when you can play a deck that does the same
Exactly.
thing just better?
What? Yeah.
The thing that Showstopper offers is one, he's like the rogue deck essentially, and he's actually a really good deck, right? If you go back into the previous metas of the game, this is essentially the only format that Bravo Showstopper has not been good in, and it's because he's kind of being outshined by his older brother, Bravo star of the show, right? But he's got a solid game plan into the Rune Blades. I think he's good into all three Rune Blades. Viscerai kind of fell off, but like we said, so two of the Rune Blades are
if we see
into
Kano.
yeah, that's but he's good into two of the four heroes that we put in competitive, right? And I think if you can figure out a way to shore up the Bravo Star of the Show matchup, then I think he's essentially a real candidate to maybe not win if there's a Prism in the top 8, but definitely top 8, right? The Pro Tour or calling, because the only reason why why I would argue that he's really bad is because the Prism matchup, right? It's completely unwinnable, and even if you to sideboard your whole deck to even have a chance of beating them, you just blow up like all your other matchups. So it's better for him to just stay in his strong suits of one, beating the Rune Blades, and if someone can figure out a deck list that's good in the Star of the Show, then I think he's really good, or at least in the somewhat viable, right?
Okay, I mean that was a great argument. I just the issue is with this meta. I mean, we're gonna see him, we're gonna see her, you know. So I don't know. I don't see him making top 8 unless he gets really lucky into his matchups. But we'll put him there. That was a good argument. Azalea, I also think is somewhat viable. I'm just throwing this out there. I did play against Kyle, or if that's his name, and it's insane. The on hits turn after turn. Even if you have a bad turn, you can still get off an arrow with an on hit, and they're good enough that you want to block. That's the only reason I'm putting them in somewhat viable, because you run into aggro decks and they struggle. I was playing Chain. He came in with a red in the ledger for 8 dominate. I gave him all my armor, carrying Husk, and he still was able to get over with his new Rain Razors. He Razor Reflex. I mean, he has a lot of attack reactions he can play to make everything hit. And I know that's probably his best card is red in the ledger, or her best card, but I think somewhat viable, because you run into Bravo, you can't block anything. You're losing cards. Prism, you're losing. But I think it would be interesting to see her played more into Chain, and let's say Briar, for instance, or any of the Rune Blades where they don't block super great and have any sort of swing back after you have to block so many on hits. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think for fun. I think the arguments that you brought up, like for example, if she can hit with you with like a red in the ledger, 11 dominate every single turn, she's gonna win the game. But other than that, like most of the arrow on hit she has in the form of like fatigue shot, so half the attack. Like most decks don't care about that, and it's just like the premise of Ranger having no blocking potential, and the whole weapon argument of they don't have a weapon that actually does anything without cards in their hand. It's just she demands too much, and then like she's very fragile, right? So for example, like Star of the Show comes in and disrupts her in any way, or Lexi comes in and disrupts her in any way, or if Briar comes in and she has to actually block an on hit, it's like not even, she can't even like compete with those decks essentially, I feel like right now.
It is no contest, but I'm saying if she can get the ball rolling, and like she does, almost all Azalea's plays somewhat hybrid. I mean, the Ravenous Rabbles, the just snatches, and the Scar for Scars. It's kind of like the Cheerios Briar, right? So they have these go agains, and like you're eating that damage, and then they do come in with that arrow, right? and you might have already blocked. But granted, if you are a smart player, you're probably waiting for the arrow on hits, so you're probably not wrong there. I'm going to put potential to beat new players. But were you going to say something, Jonah?
No, I was just gonna say, Azalea has a really strong hero ability. It's kind of clunky and requires a little bit of, like, I'll call it Kanoism. You know, you gotta like opt through your deck a little bit, maybe remember what you're pitch stacking, so later you can pop off. She's just in the current meta. The what I always like, I forgot who put it, who said it to me, but you have to ask yourself, can this hero, X hero, the one you want to play, beat the most played deck? And currently, the most played deck, I think, without question, everybody could say would be Starvo, because it's pretty easy.
It's oppressive too.
Yeah, and I would say followed by the other two in the top three we talked about, Chain and Prism. And can Azalea beat those three heroes consistently?
No.
My answer is no. So that's why in the meta I would put her as just for fun or whatever, on the bottom, below somewhat 5.
Okay.
I'm not being a dick. I love Azalea, and I would love her to be competitive, but in the current meta, she's not.
True. Jake, we haven't heard from you for a minute. Which hero do you want to talk about?
Let's talk about how Dash Baby needs to move up a couple ranks.
I don't
think
think
Dash is that low.
I don't think she belongs here either, personally.
No, not at all.
I think
Dash
she belongs next to the Showstopper.
Yeah. And is he even here?
Yeah.
He's in somewhat viable.
He's crying right now.
No, I'm right here. What?
Oh, Jake.
Just kidding, buddy.
What?
We just
I
want.
said you were crying.
Give us some input on the Dash. Why is she good? What's her strengths? What's her weaknesses?
You just popped off and won an armory, so I don't know.
Against
down
Chain.
Bad. The stocks are down bad.
You beat a Chain. You beat
I
a
don't know.
Reinhardt.
I think she has potential, and I think there's probably a deck out there somewhere that can compete with what's going on. But I mean, she's just, I don't know. She just has no on hits, which means people don't want to block her, and they swing back with on hits.
She has one on hit in the deck, right? Combustible Courier.
I mean, there's a few, but exactly. Like
Yeah.
the fact that there's no on hits, it's just damage. And like, sure, you can go like the all boost, but like if someone just if their deck's set up to just fatigue you, you just fatigue yourself.
I do want to say I have noticed when you play her, like, she is super good at controlling the game, though, with her pistol when you do play her in that control
She is,
deck.
but in this meta right now, you cannot control Starvo, which
Nope.
means you can't play that way. Or you can attempt to and just kind of death by 1,000 giant cuts, So, and then I mean Chain, I don't think she can fatigue Chain,
Oh,
especially a good Chain player.
because the Rosetta Thorn and the mixed damage.
I don't think she could.
Okay.
I think there's a build where you can race with the Teclo Pounder though, but I would say you would have to have the best 3 first turns to actually not have a close game.
Yeah. I'm gonna save everybody time. And if anybody disagrees with me, I don't know. Viscera just got absolutely demolished.
I think he's somewhat viable.
I would put him in somewhat viable too.
I think he's a great aggro deck.
Yeah.
There's nothing changed with the 5-card hands that he has. He can still do 20-some plus damage. The only thing that I feel like the really downside that he lost, I mean, obviously he lost Skeletor, but what the play pattern that Skeletor enabled was him to essentially roll over any of the slow decks by just switching into an OTK plan.
Yeah.
So if you went into Old Him, if you went into the control style of Starvo, both those decks would essentially be a free win for him, because he can block a little bit with the unmovables and sinks and reduce the rune chance, things like that. and then on his turn he'll make a bunch of rune chants, and eventually he'll just pop off with Sonata and kill you in one turn, right? So like the decks who couldn't deal with that before, like the much slower decks, they kind of he has to work a little bit harder to beat, like, say, a deck for, like, example, Oldhim. So if Oldhim wants to just block him out the whole game, he needs to assemble his 5-card hands in a way where he's constantly doing, 20 plus damage, which is very achievable in this ride with, power cards like Mordred Tide, um, Revel and Rune Blood, and even Sonata to an extent. It's still a really good card. It's just, I feel like it's not abusable anymore with Skeletor.
Yeah, it almost. I feel like Skeletor also. So Sonata's obviously not a thing, right? But it also kind of killed Rattlebones, right? So even if you have Rattlebones in your hand, Sonata was a huge comeback mechanic with Rattlebones because you could just get another card for free, play that big card, and it could have been Amplify, it could have been Rune Flash. It didn't have to be Swarming, right? But I don't know. He did just lose some power cards. I mean, Revel and Runeblood is still Omega OP. I think it's a very busted card, especially with Thorn.
Well, he didn't lose any cards. He just lost Bloodsheath.
He lost the ability to turn a bad turn into a good turn with Bloodsheath.
But do you really ever have a bad turn as Viserai? Even if you're just sitting there making damage, that's still damage. That's going to come in later.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
Maybe I'm just no, actually I'm not. I guess I'm just a little upset.
Another thing is too, the reason why Starvo or he had to play OTK into Starvo is because Awakening for the main
True.
reason. So now against Starvo he can go however much aggro he wants into Starvo, right, and not be held back by things like Awakening. So all of a sudden, and like to counteract the saying like Rattlebones isn't that good anymore without Skeletor, I think it's still a great card. Like even a 4-card hand could be pitch a blue, you play Rattlebones, or I guess even a 3-card hand, right? So you pitch a blue, play Rattlebones, get a Swarming. You play Swarming and it gets Goga, and you make 1 Rune Chant. Then you play Revel and Rune Blood, you make 5 Rune Chants, and then you Rosetta. So it'll be 6/2/2 on top of the 3. And that all that was a 3-card hand with Rattlebones, right? So it's still a great card. So I think he just lost like the pivot potential in some of the aggro matchups where
pivot,
where he could, even if he had like 4 or 5 Rune Chants, he could block with Skeletor, pop Skeletor, either play Rattlebones for free into something like Amplify, Ninth Blade, or pop it, play Sonata, draw 2 cards for free, and then he has his 5-card hand again. So that'd be like, I think he's more fair in the aggro matchups for sure, but I think he's still a great aggro deck.
into control decks, they just can handle it now. Like you know, like you had mentioned with Oldhim, it's gonna be very hard uphill battles. Bolton.
viable.
Yeah, we all know what combo can do. I have to agree with Jacob on that.
Viable, you think?
Yeah, I mean you can play him. You can play him in 2 different ways, right?
The way I'm looking at this. Wait, who?
Bolton. You can play him in 2 different ways.
Oh, I thought we were talking about Oldhim.
Oh, Oldhim's yeah. No, Bolton. I think people are sleeping on him.
I'm thinking somewhat viable.
Yeah, sorry. I thought we were talking about Oldhim. Bolton, I would put in somewhat viable.
I used to play Bolton back in the day against back at, like, I played it at Vegas, and I was playing the aggro Raiden version, and it was a pretty good aggro deck when all of a sudden you have Tunic up and be the Vanguard, but like the way that Bolton's like forced to block into light cards or go the combo route, and like it's the same thing, like a combo deck's a combo deck, right? So if you go like turn 1 Soul Food, which is like some people have been experimenting with in the combo deck now.
In the game.
Kind of. Or if you just get like a couple charges off, or 1 charge and then 2 soul shields, and then by turn 3 or 4 you have the full combo. Obviously, he's gonna just completely annihilate whoever he's hitting across the board from. But I feel like that's not most games. And then like he can't really control Starvo, Chain, or Briar. I think he is good against Prism though. It's like his one caveat of power he has, I guess, power over Prism. That's it. So that's why I would put him in the somewhat viable, is because he can't really deal with Chain's output, Briar's output, or Starvo's discard or output.
Yeah, I mean, if he does get discarded, I guess he really can't do anything with his turns that he wants to do.
Well, yeah, like especially if you're trying to play the combo route into the full casino version of Starvo, like most like I don't know the math, but probably like at least 5 or 6 out of 10 turns they're fusing, and it gets to the point like if you just don't draw the combo fast enough, you lose. And then at the same time, if you play the raid inversion into him, then all of a sudden you have to discard 2 cards, and the best turn you have now is like Express Lightning charging, which is just 4 damage. And he's like, okay,
Huh?
well I'll take 2 damage because I'm gonna Crown Shield and then fuse again, right?
Yeah. I guess that's completely fair. Do we want to talk about Old Him?
I think he's viable, even ahead of Reinhardt.
Yeah, I would put him ahead of Reiner.
I think he's almost a
Haters.
buy. I think he's almost a buy against all the Rune Blades in
Haters.
the game. It's not even close. Um, like it's the same thing, same problem with Showstopper has though. He insta loses into Prism, so you give takes and gives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then
That's his
I think there's a
triangle.
way. Yeah, there's a way for him to be built. I think to have a chance against Starvo. I don't think it's probably going to be favorable, like 60 or 70-30, but I think you could probably get it to at least a 50-50. And if you kind of just like Oldham's like the deck, like if we kind of just get like a bunch of really good matchups in a row, you can take a loss when you get the bad matchup. So if you play like 5 Rune Blades in a row, you beat all 5 Rune Blades, and you either play Starvo, it's a close game, you lose, or Prism, you just shake hands, go get early lunch. But
Yeah.
I feel like with the right pairings, he easily a top 8 contention, easily for callings or the Pro Tour.
Yeah, he definitely can just stop everything in its tracks. And honestly, kind of a shout out to you, but I had to really sit down and think about your control deck, and we were talking about how that might be like the new way to play Oldhim, and I definitely think it could be. Um, Even with Crown, just throwing in staunches and all of the defense reactions, because they're giving you
Yeah,
4 or 5 cards, and you're giving them 2 or 3, and maybe taking like 2 and still swinging a hammer back. I mean,
the problem Old Tim will always have, you gotta ask your opponent to play faster. Smile. I don't mean to be rude, but can you please play faster, my lord?
No, time, draw, GG's.
I feel like I haven't had a bad experience like that before. Like for example, like if because I played Oldhim in the past, and like as an Oldhim player, if you're playing against Chain, I can understand that Chain wants to on the later turns of the game he can take longer to do his turns. I'm totally okay with that to try and play around what I'm disrupting him. He wants to try and play around things like the Ice React and Blizzard and things like that. I'm totally fine with that. But like if it gets to the point where like Chain is like he can't win anymore, and both players know that. I feel like I've seen game like old times called like blocks on a hit almost actually. Like I feel like I haven't had experiences where the player that you're playing against clearly has no way to win, and they're like, "No, I'll just take a draw instead."
Yeah. Yep. And that's really unfortunate. I almost feel like it's poor sportsmanship when you take a draw when you feel like you already know you're going to lose the game, and you're just not
Is
going to
it?
give it to him. I
Would you not do the same thing?
I think it's in previously I think it was against the rules to concede, but I think I feel like they recently they had something that maybe I'm out of line here and wrong, but I feel like they said like there you can concede if like there's no way that you think you can win the game, but maybe that's not a thing.
my reason being for that is like, sure, yeah, you would rather have a tie than a loss, but like you're losing this game and you're only playing it to time just to get the tie, even though you're going to lose. I mean,
The way I see it is like for expect
pretty
like
lame.
the only matchups I feel like Oldham's really gonna fatigue is maybe Chain, Briar, and to an extent the Rangers maybe.
And Katsu.
But yeah, obviously Katsu doesn't stand a chance. But if you
Yeah.
feel like the Oldham player, like if you want to be, like I would agree that it's like bad sportsmanship if you can't win the game anymore and you're like, nah, just take a draw. Like if you think about it, like the Oldham player, provided he wasn't being a jerk to the entire game, he could have called a judge over and at like I want you to watch the game so my opponent doesn't take too much time on his turns. Because if you think about the way Oldham plays, he'll take like 30 seconds to do his turn, right? Most of the time it's Winter's Wail or it's something like E-Strike Winter's Wail or it's Channel Lake Winter's Wail. Like his turns are very simple. So like if you do the math on who's taking the longest time to do the turns, it's usually always the player against Oldhim because they have to deal with the disruptions effects that Oldhim has, like the Ice React and Channel Lake Frigid. I've had games where I played against an opponent who's thought for 3 or 4 minutes on how they want to play their turn because they have a Lake Frigid and a Frostbite down, right? So it's like the Oldhim player could also like be a dick and essentially like, hey, I'm gonna call a judge, and you get like 2 minutes to do your turn.
Yeah, I don't know. I do have to like somewhat agree that people are probably in a little more stressed situation, especially at tournaments. But yeah, you do have to play, like you had said, to his time and kind of hurry the game along, or else you're going to time.
Yeah, no one wants to take a draw in the game. And like I feel like if you're in the mindset of I'd rather deny my opponent to win than like
You're a
acknowledge
piece
his
of
play
shit.
that
Yeah,
basically, yeah.
and it
All
also
right, you guys are being a little fucking a little excessive there. If you guys were in a match where you had a chance at top eight, had a chance at getting into the top eight, where you knew the meta, like what was in the top eight, you would be able to handle most likely. You did all the math calculations, all that shit, and the match you had before that and a tiebreaker would have been like fine, and you're just like, yeah, I would just totally give it to the other guy. I'd just be like, no, there's no way I could win. I'm gonna give it to him and sacrifice my top eight chances.
well,
Fuck you. You would literally draw as long as you could, especially if it was an Oldhim game, and try to play to where you did draw and you did get your chance at the top eight. Your tiebreakers were better, whatever it is. Like you guys are being a little exaggerated, I think, on that aspect.
well, I think at that point, the only reason I'm saying that is like, for example, say I'm playing Chain, I have 6 Soul Shackles, I have my 4-card hand, and I have like 3 cards, and time's about to be called. I would probably still give it to that guy because you lost the game, like no matter what. And if time gets called,
I don't think that's a realistic situation you'd be in. In the Chain Oldham games, when they get to time, you run like Shackle 8+, 8, 9, 10 when your whole deck's gone. And at that point, like if you have Ursa out, or even if you have Ursa out, your Oldham has like 10, 15 life. It does like Ursa doesn't matter. Eventually, he's gonna draw a 3 for 7, kill Ursa, and all you have is Rune Chant Rosetta, and you're gonna lose the game eventually, right?
I'm
it's
just
inevitability.
Yeah, I'm just saying like you obviously want to play your games all the way out, but like as soon as you know you're gonna lose, like and it's lost, and time's about to be called, I don't think I would personally take the draw. Like, I don't know. That's just me.
I wouldn't take the draw either.
Because, I don't know, you want to see if you still make top 8 even taking that loss. I don't know. Draws feel bad in this game.
I don't know. I feel like the Oldhim like running to time thing only affects like a few heroes in the game. Most heroes who play against Oldhim, it won't go to time.
It shouldn't, yeah. Everyone's throwing out
especially
4
at
or
like
5 cards of hand
if you think
sometimes.
about these very competitive level of the game, like at the highest level, like talking for the Pro Tour, like everyone in the Pro Tour had to be qualified to get into the Pro Tour, right? And it wasn't like the Nationals qualification where there's 800 players. I think there's literally like half that. I think there's like 400 some players who qualified, and probably not all 400 of them are even going, because sometimes it's for some people across the globe it's not even feasible for them to go.
Yeah.
But like if you're in that spot position to be playing in the Pro Tour, there's no reason for you to go to time against any hero. Unless I guess if the Ultim deck literally just has like 18 plus defense reactions and literally does nothing but block you, but most Ultims aren't doing that unless you're Chain.
Yeah. I don't know. I see where Jonah's coming from too. Like if you're like that close, I could understand. For me though, it also depends on my opponent. If they're being a cunt, excuse my language, I would probably try and draw, because there's definitely those people that just don't know how to have a sportsman-like game, and they're just being assholes. That sucks. And then obviously you're gonna want to make them draw if you can. But
I didn't mean anything bad by it, and I also wasn't like saying anything negative about either of you. I was just stating that in most given scenarios, should a draw be the result and you are on the end that would catch a loss if you just gave it to them, there's not many where it would like there's like one situation that I could see, maybe 2, where you're like, yeah, I'm not gonna make it, so like here's the W. Otherwise, you've done really well throughout the day, and the draw is better than a loss. Like the loss actually puts you at not getting into the top 8, and the draw puts you at potentially. So you're saying you would just give up your potential into the top 8 because you think drawing?
I wouldn't concede to anyone if I think there is a path to victory, right? And I don't mean concede like I'll just scoop up my cards and be like, okay, you can sign the slip or whatever. I'm saying like, for like the example that I keep going back to is a Chain, right? Like if Oldhim lets you have excess time on your turns to think through and stuff like that, and it gets it's gonna get to the point where Chain literally has no deck left in the game, and he probably has Ursa out at this point, especially at the high level of play. And unless he had these insane turns where Oldhim's like really low on life and like below probably 10, then Chain would have a shot of winning. But what I'm saying is like if it's dragging out and you're just waiting for Oldhim to draw like Oakenold, so 3 for 7, and he's just blocking 2 or 3 his entire hand essentially, and he's taking no damage because all you can do at the end of the game is Ursa, make a Rune Chant Rosetta, so 6 into 1/2. Oldhim can block that with his entire deck for literally like infinitely until he runs out of cards. He just needs to find the card that kills Ursa, and then once Ursa's gone, there's no path to victory, right? So if time gets cold and I have no deck, and like Oldhim has um 10, 15 life left, and I'm slowly dying out to the carrion husk, it's like I wouldn't be like, okay, draw, right? I would be like, eventually I'd get to the point where it'd be like, okay, Winter's Wail, okay, no blocks or whatever. Essentially, is like the argument for me. It's not like you're playing, like, for example, like you're playing Reinhardt against Oldhim and it goes to time. Like, it goes to time, obviously, or it can go to time. But if it actually went to time, both players are playing at a reasonable pace, and it's a draw, right?
Yeah. Last thing I want to say, anybody can say anything else, is we'll talk about Dory next, but I've just been in multiple tournaments where, like, they knew I was going to win, they went to draw, and they gave me the win, and it's like, you don't know how much, like, we appreciate that when, like, someone, or, like, the same for you. You're going to win, and someone knows it, and they're like, yeah, you can just have it, and it's like, thank you. Like, it just goes a long way, and you can tell when you do that for other people, they just, I don't know, like, it just feels good. And when people are like just wanting that tie, and I get it, like I said, if you are so close to making top 8, that tie is better. But yeah, yeah. Let's talk about that Dorinthia. I think somewhat viable. And the only reason I say that is
I just think potential to beat new players.
Because you always lose to her.
I was just gonna say she's pretty good into aggro decks. I mean, controls mop her up, but this is a pretty aggro meta. And
I don't think she stands a chance against Chain.
well,
Briar I could maybe see, but
yeah, I was gonna say Briar. She probably loses to Prism, right?
100% loses to
Yeah,
Prism.
that's an auto loss almost.
She probably loses to these two.
I would imagine she loses to Viscerai as well. Showstopper also beats her. Holden beats her. Reinhardt's probably. Jonah, what do you think? Reinhardt probably beats her, is my guess. With just the D-reacts and the potential to just do unblockable damage.
I would say if you side correctly, Reinhardt probably wins, but against a good hero, a good Dorinthia, like, it's 60-40 Reinhardt, just because I can intimidate all your cards and kill you at the end, or reckless swing or whatever. It's close though.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think
Dorinthia's not a bad hero.
Very well.
I don't think people are good at playing her.
I put her in that viable.
I think the Warriors are. I think she's in the noob stomping class almost. In Blitz, like, she's kind of a menace because if you don't block correctly, in the sense that you only have 20 life as well. Like, she can get to the critical mass where all of a sudden you have to block the Dawnblade, and then when you block the Dawnblade, you're triggering Reprise, and you're triggering Glint and things like that. But in CC where you have a 40 life threshold of use my life as a resource, like most of the on hits Dorinthia has, except for the counter, isn't really like that impactful.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Like, if you have like a 5-card Dorinthia turn, unless it's like Steelblade Supremacy, Iron Song Determination, some insane turn that your opponent literally, even if they block, they get fucked, and they don't block, it doesn't matter because she's gonna have a crazy turn regardless. But I feel like those hands are like far in between and really rely on Steelblade Supremacy, while like the other aggro decks don't need 1 of a 60 or 3 of a 60 card in their deck. Usually they're good with all rares, commons, or
Yeah.
like, for example, Chain, he doesn't need Shadow Puppetry to have a good turn. He doesn't need Art of War to even have a good turn. He can just have a good turn with playing an on-attack card from Blood Debt, Soul Shackle.
Yeah, he
something
just
Rosetta.
draws 6 cards a turn.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the Dorinthia hands, I feel like they don't upscale well unless you have certain cards that are really good.
She is getting that really good Majestic, where anytime she hits, add a counter. I mean, that is going to be a blocking turn for sure.
Yeah, I think it's got potential, but it doesn't buff the Dawnblade is the downside.
It doesn't?
No, it gives +0, but I think it gives go again, so it's like 1 for go again, so it's not bad.
Wait, what are you talking about?
The card in the dual battle thing, the Majestic.
Yeah, why wouldn't it buff Dawnblade?
That gives no upfront buff, is what I mean.
Oh,
So like you pay
yeah,
you pay one
yeah,
to give it go again, and if it hits, whenever you hit, you'll gain a counter, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So get
3
it.
go
I
again. If
only
it hits, I get a counter.
Yeah, exactly, right. So you need something like an attack reaction to buff it to actually guarantee the hits.
Yeah, of
But
course.
it's still a good card. I think it's still a good card.
That's Dory's game, attack reactions. As long as you're not playing axes, right? But
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of want to take the forefront on Levia. I think she has potential.
Not viable.
Yeah, I'm gonna put her to put potential to beat new players. It depends on how much she can high roll. I don't know. I tried playing her. I think I played around 12 games, and I think I won like 3.
I think she's one of the decks that has a very high skill ceiling, and one bad RNG thing more so than Reinhardt, or one bad turn you just kind of flop over and can't do anything.
Yeah.
I think she's good into Prism. She's good into Chain. She probably won't win the Starvo matchup.
Yeah.
I don't think she's good in the chain. She can't block him out. She can't do more damage than him.
Well,
she can block when she wants to, and then banish and pop off, and she can get action points. Like I'm not saying I've never done the matchup. I'm just saying like conceptually, she's a brute who's okay into Chain. Chain with soul shackles all the time. She's a brute who's okay into Chain, and then she can also play from her banish, and she can gain action points by rolling a dice. So like she's not. I'm not trying to put her into somewhat viable because she does have that fall off of like I have 14 blood debt, I can't turn it off, I die. So she's not competitive, not viable, not somewhat viable. But I'm just saying when you look at the top 3 meta, she's probably not beating Starvo almost ever.
I just think she needs a better card pool at this point. Like that's her. I hate to say it, Matthew's right. Her ability kind of sucks, but the give and take with her ability really isn't as bad as you would think if we get like a better way to get go again without rolling scabs.
I think she's got some really powerful cards,
Mm-hmm.
but like it's kind of like the brute thing where you have to jump through hoops to like have a good turn.
Yes.
But like there's great Leviathans which would rival any of the top heroes in the game, like 3-card hand, pitch a blue, Dread Screamer, 6 go again into I think it's either Boneyard Marauder, which is like 1 for 7 or 1 for 6, or Graveling Growl, which is 1 for 7, I believe. So like 3-card hand, all of a sudden it's 13 damage, which is pretty good.
And
then she also has access to Blood Rush Bellows, right?
Yes.
So Blood Rush, Claw, big attack.
Well, her Blood Rush. I will say this from the testing, her Blood Rush turns definitely outnumber Reinhardt's minus that the OTK turn Jonah goes for.
Intimidate.
No, what is that? What is that? Yeah, the Tear Limb. That is insane in Reinhardt. But other than that, like, because she can end up with that Graveling Growl too, which is massive from her banish, or if she just banishes.
Yeah, you can have insane Leviathans, right? If you have a 5-card hand, just like Blood Rush, Claw, Dread Screamer, Boneyard Marauder, or Graveling Growl, same thing applies. All of a sudden, it's insane.
It's Omega inconsistent.
That like I feel like the best turns on Levia is the turns you're playing Blood Rush Bellows, and it's only 3 of 6 or 60 in your deck.
Yep.
And then combine that with like the downside of, you can't really activate Blood Debt in the early parts of the game, so you almost turn off half your cards for like the first until you build up your graveyard at least a little bit.
Yeah.
Because a lot of her cards, for those who don't know, requires you to have 3 cards in your graveyard to banish, and if you don't meet that threshold, then you just can't play the card.
Her game plan is just not strong enough. Her game plan is blocking until you get your rip, like the cards that let you, like Blood Rush and Art of War, so you can start cycling to find those cards even faster, which are so
I think she's one of the heroes with the highest future potential because she can run Carrion Husk, right? It's a great armor piece. She can run block 3 with the Scab Skins, so she's got potential in the future for sure.
Yeah, she has potential high roll.
That as well, but every hero has potential high roll.
Would we all agree that Lexi's viable at this moment?
Yes.
No.
Lexi's almost on the cusp of competitive, I think. That's how good she is.
Yeah.
She's somewhat viable.
Why?
No. Cause she's all right, I guess.
There's two distinctive different routes she can go. So it's hard for heroes to sideboard correctly against her. Not that there's drastically different plans for either version, but like the Ice Disruption is really good against the aggro versions of decks, just excluding like Chain, I think, because I think that's favored for Chain. And then she also has the Lightning build where she's rivaling how much damage Channel Mount Heroic Briar is doing on a Channel Mount Heroic turn, right? If things go right for her on her turn, she has a Rain Razor's turn or Art of War and shoots like 3 or 4 arrows at you. All of a sudden, oh fuck, it gets to the point where like I gotta block,
Yeah.
right? It's like almost like Dash when she's boosting, except she doesn't have the downside of boosting. She just does so much damage, while at the same time, especially the Lightning version, all of a sudden, if you leak 1 damage, you're taking 9, right?
Yep.
You got like 2 Frazzles stacked up, and then like you're triggering the Frazzle, and then you're triggering Electrify, so it's getting bonus there, and then you're like, oh, Shock Charmers twice, you're pinging 2 or 3 damage per Shock Charmers thing. And then she also has like the thing like, especially the Lightning build, like you flip a card, you play Snatch, go again. You can play things like Heat Strike. She's got a really high ceiling on the damage in the Lightning build, and while at the same time the Ice build is also very good at disruption.
Yep. I would say her only downside is once you disrupt her, she's got to somehow swing it back in her direction, which is kind of hard to do.
Yep, it's the same like if you go back to what we were saying about Azalea, right? She's got the Ranger problem of 1, not having a weapon. 2, she's got essentially no armor. And like if you have to like block some really crucial on hits, Lexi she just falls over.
Yep.
But if she has full tempo the entire game, you're going to lose.
Yep.
There's essentially no way to come back.
I 100% agree. She's nasty. I have a question for you guys. How do you think you can end up pulling tempo back? Like when do you think those cusp turns are?
I think there's certain things that especially the Rune Blades can do. They can run CNC. Obviously, CNC is good in all the Rune Blades. They can also access to that Talisman card that not many people are high on, but Talisman of Warfare. So whenever you deal exactly 2 damage, all arsenals, the Talisman break and all arsenals get destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
So if Lexi has a 2 card or 2 cards in their arsenal and a 4 card hand, she's like, okay, I'm just not gonna block you because my 6 card hand's insane. And you're playing Chain, for example, so you slap that down, you Soul Shackle, you play whatever attack, Ghostly Visit, Bounty Demagon, it doesn't matter. And then Rosetta, all of a sudden she has to not only block the Arcane to not lose her arsenal, she also has to block the physical. So she has to block 1 Arcane or 1 physical or completely cover it up. And then if you can get cards out of Lexi's hand, she kind of almost like stops working.
Yeah, that Talisman card is very interesting. That's for sure.
I think it's exceptional in the Rune Blades, and the other heroes it's kind of a meme. Except for Dash. Dash can also kind of abuse it with the pistol.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like you turn all your five attack cards, and everyone's trying to block 3, and all of a sudden it's like, well, I need to overblock now if you really care about your arsenal.
Well, I don't think Lexi was blocking a 5 attack thing regardless. It's more of like Rosetta Thorn that it's exactly 2/2, so you have to block regardless unless you want to lose your arsenal.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying in general, for the future of the game.
Yeah.
Kano, somewhat viable, right?
Hope you got your no rune in your list, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd put him in somewhat viable.
Some people can pop off, and sometimes you get
when Kano gets rolling, and you're sitting at the table and you're looking at your 2 null rune, your 2 AB, and your hand of 4 reds.
Or your
especially if
one null rune.
Your 1 null rune, and it's like,
Yeah.
Sonic Boom for 3. Oh, I can take that. I'll take 2. Take 3, and then another Sonic Boom. It's like, Sonic Boom for 4. Tome off the top, draw 2. Do a couple Kanos, and then
yeah.
A few more Arcane and a Blazing Aether later, all of a sudden you're sitting at half your life.
What's the damage threshold you should be really scared of Kano? Because, man, he can just do so much.
I've seen Kano can do upwards of 30 damage in a turn if you don't block.
Mm-hmm.
He just needs to hit the right things off the top.
And it's so scary because he has so much... What is the word I'm looking for, guys, when you get the cards that draw you more cards to find more cards? What is that called?
Tutors?
Draw power?
Not tutors. It's like where you can just start flying through your deck to get your other cards.
Yeah, like, for example, there's a Kano turn in Blitz that my brother did. And, in the 40-card deck, he probably saw 11 or 13 cards in one turn,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
So you get to see... what a standard hero might see 4 or 5 cards in, Kano will probably see 8, depending on, what goes if he hits tomes off the top and things like that.
Yeah, he has 3 Tome of Aether Winds, 3 Tome of Fandels, and I mean you're just flying through your deck. You can opt a lot. They play they play Talismanic Lens. It's just insane. I don't know. Yeah.
You know, punish this. You got no null rune, or you're one of the decks that don't really have a null rune game plan, is in the sense like you only have reds, or most of your deck's red.
Mm-hmm.
Your only game plan is race, and you know, pray that he doesn't hit the nuts essentially. And most of the time, it doesn't even have to be the nuts. Like he can set up turns where you know goes first, and he plays like Aether Spindle for 5. You know, your deck with 2 null rune. You know, you take 3, gets to opt the top 3 cards of his deck.
Yep.
You know, gets to set up you know what he wants to draw. And things like I enable huge turns as well.
I've been personally thinking about this with the new meta shift when Uprising comes out. I think he will probably end up moving up to Viable because it seems like the new Illusionist is going to want to be playing all red. Obviously, Icelander might be a pretty nice counter into him, but obviously
She does get Heart of Ice.
it's going to be very interesting to see if the Ninja is going to want to play all red deck because obviously we have not seen really any of his cards, right? Essentially, like his actual commons and rares, but it's very interesting. On to Katsu. I personally don't know where to put Katsu.
Top tier competitive, unstoppable force. I think he's in the somewhat viable as well, even though you know most of the heroes fall in here. I think the competitive are the tier 1 decks, and then viables, you know, on the cusp of tier 1, and then somewhat viable is probably tier 2 / tier 1.5.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on how you look at it. But you know, he's got a decent game plan. You know, he's an aggro deck. He threatens on hits every single turn of the game, regardless of his hand usually.
Mm-hmm.
But he's kind of like too slow to keep up with Chain, too slow to keep up with Channel Mount Heroic Briar if she gets out early heroics and things like that. Doesn't kind of flops over to disruption effects, and he can't really have the D-reacts to stop Starvo. So if you don't have like a good pressuring turn, or you just get fused on a bunch of times, you don't have the bailout that Chain has of carrying Husk and you know block 10 equipment.
Yeah.
So.
And it's almost like it depends on who you're sitting across the table against. If you're playing Katsu, if they know what to block, you're losing it, right?
Well, that and some aggro decks might just say, okay, no blocks, right? Like Briar or Chain, like, okay, my hand's insane. I got Channel Mount Heroic out. And, you know, Katsu might do a 20-some damage turn with Whelming Gust Wave and Surging, and then, you know, the other aggro deck swings back and does way more than that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like his ceiling's almost kind of capped in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, I've been playing some games with it, and it's not brain dead per se, but it's you know what you're doing every hand you get. You know what you're blocking with. It's a very easy deck to play.
I feel like his biggest downside is the armor, right? He's got no
Yeah.
armor, while as the Rune Blades can pivot with their armor and swing back with a colossal turn, whereas Katsu can, you know, he can have like on par with the same like level of how much damage he's putting out, but it's like as soon as he has to block, it's the same thing with Lexi. Like if Katsu has a tempo, well, you know, he kind of feels like an unstoppable, like how do I beat this deck? But you know, if you're able to slow him down just a little bit, he kind of just like falls over almost.
Yeah, Kadachi, 1 attack, Arsenal.
Yeah, Kadachi 0 for 4, Arsenal,
Yeah.
and then your opponent swings back with, you know, colossal turn. It's like,
He's a lot of chip damage, and that's why Turtle Katsu used to be good, but everything's way too fast. Yeah, I would agree with everybody. The only thing I don't agree with is Dory, but that's because I suck against her, so. Anyways, you guys want to go revisit the Uprising cards? I'm kind of curious to hear what Jake has to say since he wasn't here, and I know we've slightly talked about it. Let's hide this really quick. And looks like our we're gonna scroll all the way to the very back. Alright, Channel of the Bleak Expanse. Heroes can't reveal cards, search decks, or draw cards from effects. Matthew brought up a huge point. It is just a block 2. And it's a fuse card. really think it's gonna shine into other elemental decks for the fact that they can't fuse.
Yeah, I need a break, bro.
You need a break?
Do you
I
not
think it's
realize how long
revisit.
we've been talking about?